Yo, peace,
Peace and
man.
blessings.
It's been a minute, brother. Welcome to
Nah, it's
another,
been a minute.
indeed, welcome to another edition of Plot and Progress. I'm your humble host tonight, Brother True. Brother Kylon will be coming in later on. He's running late. We got a very special episode 54.
Damn.
Yeah, 54, man. It's going by fast, man. Um, y'all haven't seen Brother Delonne for a minute. Uh, he recently went on a very special trip that we're gonna get into. He went to the
To the
concert.
continent. I went to the continent, man, to the motherland, to the epicenter of where it all started.
Cradle of
Figuratively and
Civilization.
literally. Yes.
Cradle of Civilization. So before we get into this life changing trip, which I'm sure it was, we're gonna get into like one of our favorite segments, a tradition that we have here at Plow and Progress, called "Who Spit
Who
Their
spit
Ball."
them bars?
And you know what, Delon, if you don't get this, I'm upset. But I don't know. It's
Man.
like you be like kind of late with some of the newer hip hop stuff, but I don't know. I think you might get this one, brother. So let's try
Okay. That's a lot of pressure. Let's go.
it. And so it goes. It, it takes waking up early to face the moment debating. Should I save it or blow it? I mean, there's only some paper. None of my neighbors too nosy. The Joneses owning some acres.
Oh yeah. I know
Be
this
the
one.
greatest is lonely, but it chose me. I take it, whatever. Yo, Delon.
That's Nas. Come on, man.
Steve.
Yeah. King Nasir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's off the legit joint from
hmm
King's Disease 3, where a Hit Boy took that Five Heartbeats sample and flipped it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, with that nostalgia. But brother, before before we get, this is basically going to be you just giving your testimony, brother, and just where I feel I can add on or just inquire about certain things that you and touch on certain things that you build on. I'll jump in, but I kind of just want to just drive it a little bit, and you could tell we'll stop off at certain locations you could tell me about. So first of all, how did this come about? What made you decide to go upon this journey?
Oh man. Um Last year I was watching Belly. No, I'm just playing.
Wow. Oh,
No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. Nah, originally how it started was last year, me and the family were just sitting around talking, and it wasn't even really about a family vacation as much as that we was actually talking about like expatriation. We were talking about leaving America for good, and if we were to leave America for good, where would we go? And in having the conversation with my son, he's like, hey, I'm down. Like if that was the move, and as a family y'all decided, hey man, let's pick up and go, I'm with it. And Africa was obviously a very high on the list of places, and it was more so just a conversation piece. I think that a while back we had some conversations with Sister Olaremi. For those of y'all don't know, she's a sister who is from America. I think she's from Texas, and she expatriated to Senegal. She does these tours every year where around the holidays she'll take people from America and they'll go to Senegal and just kind of get an experience of what it's actually like to be on the continent. So originally we were talking about going to Ghana and Senegal and go spend a couple weeks there. Then we realized it was like, man, two weeks to spend a week in Ghana and then a week in Senegal. It would be a huge disservice to both places to only spend a week there and really try to get a good feel and a good sense of the culture and what it would be like. So I think it was actually, I don't think, I know my lady was the one that came up with the idea. Kenya, and Kenya had been a place that um, I wouldn't say was on my radar. Whenever I used to think about moving to Africa or going to Africa, it was always West Africa, right? Ghana, Senegal, just because I haven't done like a lineage where a 23andMe where you find out where your ancestors come from. But I just always assumed being from America and the whole international Atlantic slave trade, most of our ancestors come from West Africa. That's just how our natural progression from the continent to America is for a lot of people. So I knew about Kenya because I knew about the Mau Mau revolution. I knew about that whole Kenya fighting to get their independence back from the British. They were one of the last places to be colonized. And then there was, I won't say it was for a short time, but it definitely wasn't the longest period of time. And when they got their independence through the revolution, part of the different tribes coming together to unite to get their independence, it's always been a place that I knew about, but just was never like, I want to go. So when she said that, I'm like, okay, cool. As we start getting closer and closer, I start doing more research into Kenya. A friend of my sister, she graduated, she got a master's degree, and she met a brother named Steven. And he's in the Kenyan army, and he lives in a small town called Katali. And originally, that was our plan, was to go see him on his farm, to kind of tie into our agricultural piece and us growing here and having this desire as a family to have a farm. I wanted to link up with him because he's got, I think he said it was like 30 something or 40 some acres, maybe more, but he grows coffee, bananas, potatoes, beans, you name it. My man got zebras just kind of like walking through his neighborhood, and he was excited for us to be able to go. But the biggest challenge for us is the closer we got and we start trying to plan out the trip and all the things that we wanted to do as a family. It was like, man, that's like to go from Nairobi to where he lives. He lives near the border of Uganda, near Mount Elgon. That's where his tribe is from. His tribe actually used to own that land. That was their land prior to British colonization, and then they ended up turning it into a national park. And so some of his tribe ended up spreading north into Uganda. So anyway, long story short, that was a hike. It would have been a really long drive. It would have taken us way out of our way, and having only about 2 weeks to spend there, we had to X that part of the trip out. So then we just kind of settled on we would go to Nairobi. We spent some time in Nairobi, which is the capital. Then as a family, we all are we love the beach, we love the water, so we picked Mombasa and then Diani also as two places that we spent some time, and then we would circle back around to Nairobi. And yeah, that's kind of how that all came about, man. We just wanted to see what it was going to be like. Like if we're really talking about leaving this country and leaving for good, or at least having dual citizenship, we couldn't really make that decision until we had a chance to actually go visit the continent and see what it was like. So,
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes when my ex-wife and I had a determined idea to go out there is she just wanted to move out there. I'm like, can we do the knowledge first? For
yeah,
but so what this individual you were speaking of, so your lady brought up Kenya. Was it just did you have somebody hosting y'all or like did you have a connect out there?
yeah.
Just
Mm-mm. Now, like I said, other than my guy Steven, that I had a chance to probably build with him. Once we made the decision that we were going, then the universe started sending us people, right? Like, I met him through my sister. A conversation with Brother Ace Black. He was actually on one of the previous episodes.
nice.
It just the universe started to kind of just send us things, but we didn't have a guide. When we touched down in Kenya, like it was just us. We booked some Airbnbs and the places that we wanted to stay. We had an idea, some things that we wanted to do, but we just touched down and we just went.
Nice.
I'm an international traveler. I've been all around the world, and I've oftentimes gone alone.
Okay.
So that's never been like a huge hang up or something that's a reservation for me, like going to a place and not having an actual guide or knowing somebody that's going to be able to help me to navigate the land. Like, here's what I know to be true is that people travel internationally every single day. They travel individually, they travel in big groups. It's men, it's women, they black, white, Hispanic, Asian, like all these different nationalities and cultures. They just packing up and going. So
Mhm.
it's never been a fear of mine. I always believe that the universe has for me what's designed for me. And if it's meant for me to walk outside my front door and get ate up by a dog or get run over by a bus here, then the same thing can happen abroad. So I'm not going to be afraid leaving my home here. Why would I be afraid going abroad? So yeah, we didn't really have anybody to help us get around. The one time we did link up with my boy Steven, he pulled up on us. I think it was day 3. It was right before we ended up going from Nairobi to Mombasa. He pulled up on us and spent the day with us, kind of drove us around Nairobi, just giving us like a history lesson of the city of Nairobi, the different parts of town, and just really giving us a lot of free game about just really Kenya as a whole, and then really Africa as a continent. It was a beautiful thing to be able to spend some time with him. He took us to his son's house. We got a chance to meet his daughter-in-law, and she gave us some real good insight and some real game. And then the rest of the time, it was just like Uber drivers, and it was, when we went to a place called Paradise Lost. One of the guys there was like a huge valuable asset. He actually took us to a cave where during the time of the Mau Mau Revolution, um, the different tribes, like the Maasai tribe and all these different tribes, like when they would go into the mountains and they went inside of this cave, and that's where they would like kind of hide out, and they would regroup, and then they would come back out and spring back into action. He actually took us into this cave, to where we got a chance to actually be where all of these soldiers once were. 1963, I believe, or 19, it was in the 60s, so I think it was like 1963, so 60 some years ago. All of these 10 thousands of soldiers from, and not we're not talking like soldiers like the British had soldiers. We're talking about like tribesmen, a bunch
Mhm.
of tribesmen that just banded together and said, "The hell with that! We're gonna come together and we're gonna expel the British out of our country once and for all." He was a very valuable asset, and just everywhere we went, the universe would just bring us people who were a wealth of knowledge and information that could give us game about the tribes that were there, about food, about the history, the culture, just all of these different things. It just came together like quite beautifully, to be honest, man.
Man, that's real powerful, brother. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you're going back home and home took care of you, man. I know you said something earlier. You were talking about how like you felt like it didn't want you to leave or something.
Yeah. I mean, definitely the people welcomed us. They loved us. It's always been this stigma when I was growing up that Africans don't like us, and they don't respect us, they don't understand us, they don't want us to come home. And nah, that's it couldn't be further from the truth, man. We got welcomed and we received so much love. And it was instances like people was like, man, yo, it's not safe, it's dangerous.
All the time.
And yeah, you know what I mean? And so me and my son, he want the whole time we was there, he wanted to play basketball. I'm like, bro, we came all the way to Africa. We're not going nowhere to play no basketball, fool. Like, you don't want to. We doing zip lining, and they ride horses and scuba diving, and I mean snorkeling, and like, you want to play basketball. So we were trying to find a court to go play ball, and also sure the place that we were gonna go was actually closed. They tore it down and built like some apartments. So I just Googled up basketball courts. It was a place that had kept coming up called Langata Downs on Langata Road. Langata is like a major road going through Nairobi. And I'm talking about, you want to talk about in the hood. It was like going to Rucker Park or something, but not like Rucker Park. Like, it was like going to some place. It was in the hood, bro. It was like for real in the hood. It's all these little rundown shanty shops. And even the Uber driver, when he dropped us off, he was like, "Hey, man, like, I'm gonna try to drop you as close to the entrance as I can, and just, hopefully just make your way in through there." We had to kind of cross over like this little canal. And but it was cool. Like, we showed up, they showed my son love. He's swapping Instagram socials, and people just walking into the park, and they like dapping us up, and they talking to us in Swahili. And I'm like, I know like this much Swahili. I can say Ujambo and Asante Sana, and Amani na Pendo, who Sasa. Like, I know a few words and some sayings, but I couldn't keep up. But it was nonetheless. Everybody spoke English as well, so we was able to communicate. But um, the last day that we was in Nairobi, we went to this mall, this market, and where we bought a bunch of art and artifacts, and we had all these bags. And the brother was like, "Yo, man, like, you need some assistance, because you know how it is. Kenyans, man, when they see that you got a little something, something, man, they gonna want to talk to you." So I was like, "Nah, we could." But it was just everywhere we went, it was just nothing but love, man. Like, nothing but none but true love, genuine love and appreciation. They looked at us like we was family. A lot of people was like, "Yo, even if you don't know your ancestry, man, Kenya is home." And it really set in when we got our visas, because when we got our visas, that's what it says from the Kenya government at the very bottom. It says, "Welcome home."
Mm.
And I think that was a true statement and a true testimony of exactly what the atmosphere was like. and we was definitely embraced for sure. It wasn't a situation where we went and they was like, man, you stupid Americans. And I met a brother, um like maybe a month or two, maybe a couple weeks or a month or so before we left. He was one of my Uber drivers, and he was from Congo, but he lived in Uganda, spent time in Kenya, and he was like, the thing about it is that we don't really know about the African American plight in the continent, especially in East Africa. Like they don't understand 100% fully about the transatlantic slave trade. They have their own experience in East Africa with the Arab slave trade, which is something that is not often talked about, right? They don't talk about, how Africans came to understand Islam, how we learn Islam. It's the same way that we learn Christianity. It wasn't necessarily by choice. A lot of times it was by force, and the Arabs had a huge part in the slave trade there and picking us up and then selling us to the British. But anyway, he was telling me, he was like, one of the things that we mainly know about African Americans is two things. He was like, hey, y'all are really good entertainers. Like, I just it's a fact. Like music and movies, like sports, we want to emulate y'all in that regard. But he said the other thing is that y'all are just angry. So
Kill
much
my
anger, so much anger, so much hate, and we don't understand why. But that perception didn't prevent people from still receiving us and treating us like we was their brothers and we was their sisters and we was family. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, man. Nakia, did you have something?
Yeah, man. So again, man, I think it's dope that you had that experience and that everything was man was all love, man. That's great to hear because that's one of the continents that I haven't been on, man. Is I haven't touched it on the continent just yet, and so that's definitely in the plans for future. So it's good and refreshing to be able to hear that part, man. I know that right now there's a lot of unrest that's going on over there due to the high unemployment, man. So tell me a little bit about the economic piece of it. You mentioned earlier that one of the brothers he was offering, he's like, hey man, you want to help me with them bags? What was that piece like, man? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so like leading up to it, they were having a bunch of protests, and we that was obviously a center of conversation for us. A lot of the people that we talked about, we wanted to know, like, well, talk to us about the protest because it had quelled down right before we got there. Which was actually another thing. It was just the universe was just opening its arms and telling us to come home, right? But a lot of it is that it isn't necessary. It is due to unemployment, but they were mostly fighting for the corruption. They just feel like that the government is being corrupt. They're taking the money and they're keeping it and they're enriching themselves. This is going to sound crazy, right? One of the native sons of Kenya is a man by the name of Jomo Kenyatta. He was one of the leaders in the Mau Mau revolution in the 60s. He was like Nelson Mandela. After that revolution, he was jailed. I think he spent 6 years in jail. He got out of jail, and then right away he became the prime minister. And then a year later, when they got their official independence, he was the first president. So he's on a lot of the money, right? The main airport is named after him, Jomo Kenyatta. And one of the things that we found out is that his family is one of the biggest landowners. They own 1/8 of all the land in Kenya. And that's what he did is in that time of being the president, he enriched himself, right? He came up on a lot of this land by hook or by crook. And then years later, his son was actually recently also president. And so they just were like, it's a lot of corruption going on. And part of that corruption is that the money's not going to places that it needs to go, like infrastructure. It's not going towards different things. And so it is high unemployment. They were also talking about taxes being an issue, right? They're like, why are you raising the taxes on us and we're poor? Like, you need to be raising the taxes on the rich. Sounds very familiar, right? Sounds
Hmm.
very familiar.
Very much
That's
so.
that's a Western play for sure. But what we found is that um, they call Kenya the Sahara Silicon, right? The Sahara Silicon Valley because it's a tech hub, right?
Yep.
Like a lot of major technology companies are headquartered there, or not headquartered, but they have big branches there. They're investing in the infrastructure and the future. So technology is a big thing there. But the youth, man, that was the one thing that a lot of the older people that we talked about, like that's what
Yeah.
led to these protests. Is the youth they not having it. Like
That's good.
Our,
That's refreshing to see too, man.
yeah.
Because when the youth stand up, that tells you that, and they're unified too. That's the thing I love about it too, man.
Yeah, you know, the future is bright for Kenya for sure. The youth is saying that, hey man, they're growing up and they're realizing that we don't have to take this. And when you have a brother like Ibrahim Traore, he's not just the man in Burkina Faso. He is you. When you mention his name, Africans
Across the
light up,
continent,
bro. Yeah, they light up, and they're like, we need people like him for sure because um, that's the biggest thing is that with this with the level of corruption that they have, they need a level of leadership that is going to do the right thing by the people and isn't going to take the bait. They're not just going to be in it for the money. And so that's the issue that the youth is having is they're like, hey man, we're not going for it. So they're showing up in numbers in the streets and they're protesting and it isn't like they're out here, armed revolution, but they're just letting their voices be heard. And so it's a really good promise that the future is going to be bright. The next 20 to 50 years in a place like Kenya, and it's going to be bright because the youth, they understand the importance of integrity, but they also understand the value of where the land that they stand on, man. So when to put it into perspective, Kenya to me economically is like America in a sense, but it's like America if you were. Well, actually, you could even take it in today's time. You got. I used to live in New Orleans, and when I was little, one of the biggest things that always stood out to me about New Orleans, it was like in certain parts, it was like a third world country. Like you couldn't believe that you was actually still in America when you would travel to some of these different parts of the city. And that's how it is in Kenya. In Kenya, most of the time when we stayed in Nairobi, the places that we stayed was in a place called Karen, which Karen is named after a lady, Karen Blixen. She wrote the book Out of Africa. She had a big, huge coffee farm, and it's probably the wealthiest part of all of Kenya. I'm talking about huge compounds, the biggest houses I've ever seen in my life. Like I've been to Hollywood in California, and I've been to Paradise Valley, and all of these. Everywhere I go to the bad parts, and I go to the good parts. And I would say that Karen would rival any neighborhood in America. I'm talking about huge compounds, multi-story compounds, sitting on major acres. The first place we stayed on, I think it sat on 6 acres, and it was just like a beautiful compound. And then you have, the inner city where you got these huge sky rises and nice, beautiful apartment buildings, and then you look and you see nothing but cranes in the sky, like they're developing, they're building, it's growing. But then you go to parts like the last day that we was there, we went to this market. It was called Mario, and even our Uber driver was like, "Wait, you want to go where? Nah, you don't want to go there, fam. You want to go shopping in Canada." It was it was about as impoverished a place as I had ever been, and it was the epitome of what people would think about Africa when they think about being poor and dirty and run down, trash everywhere, people in the streets, like just trying to figure it out. But it's all of the above. And then when you get outside of Nairobi, it's you we took a train ride from Nairobi to Mombasa. It was 6 hours, so we got an opportunity to see a lot of the landscape and a lot of these other smaller towns. And it looks like when you drive through America. When you drive through America, you got a lot of open space, open land, and you come across these small towns, and some of these towns is still run down. They living in huts and they living in shacks and they living in dilapidated buildings that haven't been updated or upgraded. And so I think that economically riding through Kenya, we all said the same thing. It was like, yo, this reminds us a lot of like America. And you could take it in today's time, but for me, really, it reminded me of what it would be like if you lived in America in say like the 1800s, where there was probably small pockets where it was a metropolis, it was a major city, it was hustling and bustling, right? I could imagine like New York on the come up, and then probably on the outskirts of New York, you had indigenous people, you had poverty, you had people that were still trying to figure out how to survive and living in shacks and huts and tents and things along those lines, and it was that was pretty much my experiences. Anything that you could imagine, good, bad, and ugly, it was there.
Yeah, indeed. We got Brother Kylon up on here before I pass
Peace.
it on to Brother Kylon, man. Like the whole youth piece reminds me of when we had El.G.A.C.Y on our show. And that was like the first time for a lot of viewers to learning about Ibrahim Chahori and what was going on in Kenya. And he said that like something I remember him saying was that like out here you will have pockets, right? You will have
Mhm.
pockets of resistance, and he
Mhm.
said like in Kenya everybody would be on it. He said from the youth to the elderly. Um, do you like? Is that what you saw as far as from your experience? Because that's
Nah,
a little bit different from America to me. You know what I'm saying? Because like there's a
yeah.
big divide between the elders and the youth here. Is it different out there?
Nah, it's the same, right? You have the elders that they recognize that change needs to happen. The elders have been able to see what it was like pre-colonization, during colonization, and then post-colonization. Well, maybe not pre-colonization, right? Because that predates like the late 1800s to early 1900s is when the British really came into Kenya and started to kind of colonize that thing. And they created the British Protectorate, right? That was, oh, well, we're not going to colonize you. We're just going to protect you. And then that turned into colonization. Um, and so the elders, they understand that they've seen how far they've come, and they have a lot of pride in what's happening with the youth. They may not necessarily be as active in the protests because they're older.
Yeah.
And so they're willing to pass the torch to the youth and give them the knowledge and the wisdom of how they came out of colonization to this point, and to give them the wisdom and the guidance of what it's going to take to get them to that next chapter. So now it is definitely everybody coming out in force, but it's spearheaded by the youth. The youth is the one that's standing up like, nah, you know what? We just not just gonna sit down and we just gonna take it and we're just gonna talk about it and come up with a strategy of a plan. We're gonna mobilize and we're gonna be out here in these streets. And so it's a combination of the because the education system out there is actually really good. They're transitioning from a period of like, okay, we have like kindergarten through sixth grade, and then you got 2 years of junior high, and then 4 years of high school, and then 4 years of college. Like they're coming to try to kind of like do the same thing. They were having like 6 years of intermediate school, maybe a couple years of junior high, a couple years of high school, and then I think like college is like 2 or 3 years. Now they're going to 4 years, and so ultimately it's going to end up like a 12 year under first elementary, junior high, high school, and then college. But the education system out there is really good, and so the youth are being educated and educated properly. They're not dumb. It isn't a dilapidated school system. That they're just basically learning the basics and then sending them out here to come and live in the streets. They're being educated and apprised on economics, on technology, on AI, on all of these different things. So the future that the youth are presenting, it gives a lot of pride to the elders. A lot of the older folks that I spoke to, man, they was like, no, we believe in the future of Kenya, and it's going to come through the youth. The youth is going to be the ones to say, you know what, we're not having any more of this. Like, we need to expel all of the semblances of Western colonization and all of the impacts that that's had on us. And part of that is that corruption and that being able to just, I'm going to enrich myself in this process, because let's be real, a lot of people get into politics not to enrich themselves. They get into politics because, hey, listen, they're trying to create change, they're trying to do something right. But when you get there, you realize that the two most important components in any society is always going to be politicians and the banks, right? And when you realize that oftentimes, especially in a lot of cultures and societies, the banks generally end up running the politicians because they have the money to be able to corrupt them in a way that says, hey, I can offer you this if you help me to do this. And I think the youth is tied to that. And when you have a brother like Ibrahim Traore, it gives promise that, hey, you know what? It is possible to have leaders that will lead and not be so concerned about enriching themselves and padding their own pockets and buying up all of the land, and keeping it for themselves.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that's good to hear, man.
Yo, peace. What up, man? I see you still got that glow on you, that Bruce Leroy glow. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nah, for
So,
sure, man.
you know what I'm curious about? I heard you speak to the level of big tech presence in Kenya, and that's something that has become apparent to me recently. What was the general sentiment of that sort of occurrence in recent time amongst the people? And then also, did you notice anything particular about how they are leveraging technology there that may be different than what we kind of see amongst us here, amongst our people?
Hmm. Ask me that first question again. I'm sorry.
What's the sentiment of like the presence of these big tech companies being there in Kenya at this time? The reason why I asked that is because like when I visited Ethiopia, what I noticed was like just in general like a fair amount of Chinese investment, and coming from the West, that is something that I didn't anticipate. But what I found interesting is that I didn't feel a lot of like resistance or opposition to that level of investment from the East, right? I
Yeah.
think people were um, satisfied with the level of like the exchange, right?
Yeah.
For infrastructure versus whatever the Chinese had particularly targeted, or at least what was their incentive to come into these spaces and do some of the activities that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with big tech, and I know there's been some coverage on it recently. Most notably, 60 Minutes, they did a segment where they were talking about some of the wages
Mm-hmm.
and how there's a lack of parity amongst some of the wages for those tasks where people are being employed and things of that nature, but perhaps there's there's an underside to that where people aren't necessarily being compensated appropriately, or some of these positions are misleading in some way. So I'm just curious to know, was there any narratives that you kind of caught wind of amongst the people, or were you able to engage any of the people to kind of get their sentiment on how they feel about, the big tech companies of the world coming in and
Yeah.
kind of planting their flag into
Yeah.
Kenya?
Nah, for sure. I think that part of the reason why big tech companies have chosen Kenya, particularly like Nairobi, right, as a place is that, again, going back to the education system, these are some very brilliant minds that are being developed and cultivated, and some of them are learning internally in Kenya and in Nairobi, and others have gotten their education other places, and they come back home and they realize that, one we talk about it oftentimes here is that you can either roll on or get rolled on. And a lot of times we last to the party here. Like you talk about technology and you talk about infrastructure and you talk about AI and these things. And our people here, what? Man, well, I don't want no parts of that. They don't want it. They're not invested. And it's not something that we're teaching our children. We're not making that push. They're making the push there. And so when you have these brilliant minds that are coming up with these new technologies, these new apps, these new developments, it's if you're a technology company, a conglomerate, a giant like say a Microsoft, you're incentivized to get there right away because you're like, we need to invest there because we can then be at the forefront of what's happening in a place. And so that's why you have a lot of these tech companies that are going there. And it's not an opportunity to just necessarily get cheap labor, because these people understand their value and they know their worth. They're very internationally savvy, so they know the prevailing wage. So yeah, the economy is, you do have a lot of people at the bottom that are not making a livable wage. But as far as technology is concerned, the people that are spearheading that, they're very savvy. On the Chinese front, you see a presence, but it isn't pow in your face, right? Like you look around and you see that a lot of the development is coming from technology, from Chinese companies, because you see it's written in Chinese. You see certain influences, Chinese influences in some of the architecture, so okay, they have a hand in some of this. They're there, but it wasn't an overwhelming presence. Like they're not there colonizing. They're not taking over. They're not there ruling. I think a lot of that is they just have the money to invest in the infrastructure. The Chinese are smart enough to see the future. They're like, okay, if all of these tech companies are coming here and they're investing, and all of these tech companies are coming here and they're supporting the brilliance of the people there and the ideas that they have as a way to bring up their own people, then why not be a part of that? But be a partner in it, not as a colonizer would come do, and we're just going to take over and we're just going to rule and we're just going to, all right, it's us now. We're going to bring in our own people. I didn't see a lot of Chinese people there, bro. I didn't. As a matter of fact, it was a struggle to find a good Chinese restaurant while we was there. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like, it's just, it's not overwhelming, right? We didn't see a lot of white people. We didn't see a lot of Asians. The white folks were pretty much confined to one portion. Like I said, we stayed in Karen. That's where you would see white people. And that's where I would generally see some Chinese folks or some Asians. But it wasn't overwhelming. So I think that to answer the first part of that question is I just think it's the brilliance of the people and the education system. Now how the education system got to the forefront and who's behind investing in the curriculum, that part I didn't really get a full sense of. But I think that ultimately it's just they see the future, and again, they're looking at it from, okay, we're on to something here. We have an opportunity to take our future into our own hands, and a lot of the people there are being proactive in trying to get out in front of that, as opposed to being led down that road. You know what I mean? We're here in this country. We're looking for someone to lead us. We had a conversation right before I left on a call about like how come we're not investing in STEM and how come our children aren't doing this, and it's like, well, it almost seems as if we're waiting to be led. We're waiting for someone to come and take us by the hand instead of looking around and saying it's here. Everybody has a smartphone, so you can't deny that technology is the future. Because I grew up in a time when I remember when a cell phone was this big. And I remember when nobody had a cell phone. I remember when a car phone was like, oh my God, what a car phone. And then pagers and all these different things. So I've been able to witness technology revolutionize itself, um, a million times magnified. Um, and to still see people deny that it's here and deny where it's going is sad. So we're looking to be led here, whereas they see it and they're like, how can we take this technology and improve our lives, right? So before we got there, one of the biggest things that is that, like, here we have like Cash App and we have Venmo. They have a thing in East Africa called M-Pesa, and it was designed by some Kenyans. And M-Pesa is just basically a way to connect the people, right? Most people don't have access to a bank account. We're talking about like street vendors, people who are very impoverished, who probably earn, maybe $2 to $3 a day. That's their wage. They don't have access to banking the same way that other countries do. So they created M-Pesa, which is on your mobile phone. You can have an app that allows you to send and transfer money back and forth without ever having it to touch a bank. So oftentimes when you would go to a store or a shop, if it was a street vendor and you like, all right, how do you want me to pay? You want me to pay you in shillings or in peso? They like, pay me in M-Pesa. And you just, punch in their till number or the pay goods number or just punch in their cell phone number. Boom. And it went from Kenya to now it's a technology that's used in a lot of East African countries. And it's just, they're looking at where they currently are and they're just coming up with innovative ways to pull themselves out of that, but make it accessible for everybody. And I think that's the brilliance of what's happening in Kenya and why they're calling it the Sahara Silicon Valley.
The Sahara Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I want to, you said something. You said you notice how, I think you said internationally savvy
Woo.
the people are. That's something I want to highlight because as Americans, I feel like that's an area that's always apparent that we're lacking in to some extent in comparison to um, people from other places, right? Like,
Mhm.
even if it's from Europe, from Africa, from Middle Eastern countries, whatever the case may be, but particularly Africans, I noticed that a lot of them speak multiple languages and they have a more global approach to education, higher education, employment, and it just seems like they sprawl out a little further than a lot of people I know. I'm gonna just speak for myself. I'm not gonna put that on all Americans, but what's great about our current generation, we're starting to get more into that type of approach, and I think considering where our technology is, which helps a lot, right? Especially social media, that gives people a lot of exposure, proper exposure. Because when we was kids, all we had was that damn TV showing us flies on faces and things of that nature, right?
Yeah,
Giving us those
yeah.
misconceptions. So now that, we can see former classmates or people, associates traveling, going to these places and seeing these experiences, and then we can have, you know, Q&As with these people. How was it? Just like you're doing in this session today, you're revealing to people what the opportunities look like, what the people look like in the context of a Black American coming over into the motherland and having this experience. So I think that's powerful that we're able to sort of leverage each other in that way and
Hmm.
promote the idea of being like global, right? And not
Yeah.
being closed minded, just thinking that America is the end all, be all. I'm sure we all know people that probably barely, if at all, have left the city limits that they were kind of like cultivated within,
Right.
and that's a significant limitation that really it handicaps a person
Hmm.
in regard to their ability to compete, right,
Yeah.
economically. You know what I mean? Like, man, I think traveling, especially abroad, I mean, that's such a powerful teacher, and it's seamless because you're immersed in a different environment. So it forces you to think differently, right?
Hmm.
And when you have these experiences and you come back home, per se, I know for me, I had a newfound like motivation, right? Not that I
Yeah.
was lacking any of that, but I had a little extra gas there, you know what I mean? Because
For
my
sure.
perspective was wider. I feel like I'm seeing it HD now.
Hmm.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
Upon
What?
your return, and I know it's fresh, you just touched back down, but is there anything that is more apparent to you now that you've come home as far as like redefining or fine tuning your purpose, your vision, anything like that that you've taken from this
Yeah.
recent experience that is serving you to put a better foot forward now that you're back home?
Yeah, man. I want to, I'm going to answer all of that, but I want to touch on the very first part of that, which is the difference in international perspective. I've said this before, and I'm well traveled. I've been all over the world. This isn't my first time to the continent. Definitely my first time to like Africa, right? Egypt and Morocco to me is Africa, but it's not Africa. And even when people were asking me, have you ever been to Africa before? I'm like, well, I've been to Morocco and Egypt, but it's like if it ain't the same, like, no, brother, we understand. That's not Africa. That's
Yeah,
basically an extension of the Middle East.
yeah,
But traveling abroad is the greatest experience that you can give anybody. Um, in America, um, we don't realize how real propaganda is. We look. I remember when I was a kid and we had to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag every morning in school. And I remember one time me and my mom had this conversation, and I watched her sit down for the flag. So I go to school one day and the Star Spangled Banner come on, and I sit down. I'm like, man, I'm not doing a Pledge of Allegiance. You crazy? And my teacher took me outside, and what she told me, she was like, imagine standing out here for 2 hours in the morning in the cold. It could be raining, it could be snowing, and you're listening to the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're listening to 2 hours of propaganda. She was like, that's what they do every day in China. They force them to listen to propaganda and yada yada yada. And you're lucky to be in the greatest country in the world, and why would you ever be disrespectful? And it's like the propaganda is real here because America has been a superpower since the 1800s. Coming out of a cotton thrust America into a superpower almost overnight, and ever since then we've taught our citizens to have this overinflated of self, of pride of country, so much so that it inhibits us from being able to look anywhere else in the world. We don't care about world news. Why would I care about what's going on in all of these impoverished countries where it's war torn and they have famine and they have poverty and they're dying, and like, why would you care about that? You know, man, America is the greatest place on. So we teach our citizens, we teach our young, don't not to care about no other place. Everything you need is right here. Why would you even want to go anywhere else, let alone think about another country? And when they talk about other countries, it's always not in a glimmering light. The only places that they'll show in a glimmering light is Western Europe. London, right? England and France and Germany. Like, these are the only places that they elevate when you see pictures of these places. It's like, oh, yo, no, that's dope. You want to go there. But like Eastern Europe and South America and Asia and especially Africa, like it's never a good look. And so since we have that perspective here, it doesn't allow people to open their eyes up to have a global perspective. Whereas in other countries, because it's so frequented and the propaganda is there, but you have people moving in and out and traveling abroad and then coming home and sharing that information, that everybody just naturally has a global perspective, especially when you take Africa. A lot of the colonization has take place. You've had all of these other countries that have come in, and you had, the British fighting the Germans in Kenya or in different parts of East Africa for rulership and territory. So they're already getting an international perspective because they're seeing geopolitics firsthand. You're seeing it firsthand. So they grow up having a greater sense of their place within the world, whereas we just think that we're at the top of the mountain and that's it. One of the things I think that there's two things that really stood out, because I was talking about in the beginning that why we ended up deciding to go to Africa is because we're embracing the idea of maybe America is not a place that we should be calling home, at least not full time, and at least not forever. That's how the trip came about. Before we make that decision, let's go check it out for ourselves. Let's see what it's like. And like instantly, as soon as I got there and we're riding through Nairobi, and then we leave, we catch a train and we go to Mombasa, and then we go to Diani and the beach, and we come back to Nairobi. Like the entire time, all I'm thinking about is like, man, like this is an opportunity to be at the front of something. If you invest in something in America, 9 times out of 10, it's already developed. It's already built. It's already built. It's already, I own stocks in a lot of companies. I own mutual funds that are invested in all these different companies. These are already developed. When I first started being a trader in the early 2000s, like the big move was in emerging markets. And oftentimes the emerging markets was in Eastern Europe. It was in Asian countries, some South American countries, not oftentimes Africa. And I'm sitting in Nairobi and I'm looking around and I'm like, bro, you have an opportunity to invest your money in a place that in 25, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, like you could be at the forefront of creating the next New York City or the next Chicago or the next LA or the next Phoenix or whatever the case, the next Silicon Valley. Like it's a burgeoning market that's on the cusp of going from like one of the people that we talked to said that in the next 20 years, Kenya will be a middle income country. So just to think about that saying, like in America, I couldn't imagine somebody saying, "Yo, in 20 years, America's going to be a middle income country," right? Like we're on the verge of being like you're just only going to have upper class and lower class. That's it. But like middle class, like yeah, everybody can has an opportunity to be middle class. Like all you got to do is go get a job at Walmart and marry somebody that also has a job at Walmart, and you can be middle class. So an opportunity to invest in a place like that, I think it just highlighted it. um, there's another piece I'll talk about in just a second, but the second thing that I kept with me was it just reaffirmed that man, we don't live in a good place. So right before we left, everybody kept talking about the travel ban, and they was like, "Bro, do you think you're gonna be able to come back?" Like, what happens if something happens? You go to a country like that's on the no visitation list. You can't come here, and then America decides they don't want to let you back in. Right? You hear all these horror stories of that's happening, especially within this administration. So we go. And one of my partners, his name is Steven, he took us to his son's house. His son's in the military, so he wasn't there. We got a chance to meet his daughter-in-law, and she works for the Kenya news station, Kenya broadcast station, and she's an environmental journalist. And she was telling us how she was trying to come to America to go to Rhode Island for a environmental conference. But she was at the embassy trying to get her visa last second, and they said that we're only giving visas if it's urgent. And so they denied her ultimately the visa. They was like, it's not urgent, it's not imperative. Like, no, you can't come. She said that the lady before her in line, her son was in America and he died. And so she was trying to come back to America. She was trying to come to America to get his remains and bring him back to Kenya. And they denied her a visa to go. And she said that the lady at the embassy told her, she was like, it's not urgent. Like, your son's already dead. This is what she told her. She's like, your son's already dead. So what difference does it make? And it's just like the level of insensitivity, right? Like to have the audacity, and this isn't a Kenyan woman, this is obviously an American woman from the American embassy. She said that the guy behind her was in line and he had just graduated high school and received a full ride scholarship to go to Harvard, and they denied him the visa. You know what they told him? You need to have $1 million in the bank, and we'll give you the visa.
Same old game, bro. Same
That's
old game.
that's the country that we represent. Like I'm there, and we're meeting all these people that they want to make us bracelets, right? And one guy was like, "Yeah, I'll make you the bracelet with the American flag," and I'm like, "Pause, hold on. I don't have the same sense of pride anymore that a lot of people on the in America have, right? Not to say that I'm ashamed to be an American, because I'm proud of the contribution that my ancestors made to this country, but I'm going to speak very frankly here, but I've also come to recognize that we were sold the lie coming out of slavery and out of Reconstruction and into Jim Crow. They abolished slavery and through the Emancipation Proclamation, and what they said was, "Hey, we'll accept you into our society. We'll make you an equal." And 200 years later, almost, we're still fighting to try to be that equal on all fronts. And it's very hard to have a sense of pride in a country that doesn't care about people that look like me. The fact that you have all of these countries, like Kenya doesn't pose a threat to America. There's not Kenyan terrorists that are creating plots against the American embassy there, or creating terrorist plots against America. But yet and still, you can consider white South Africans to be on the list of refugees because they are experiencing genocide. 5 people die in South Africa, white South Africans, 5 people die, and they consider it genocide. And so it's just the level of disrespect, man. It makes it difficult to have the same sense of pride in the place where I'm born, where my ancestors have laid their roots. They've created a foundation here for me to be able to have a podcast like this, to be able to come on a podcast and to share my voice and to share my opinion, to be able to come out here and get an education, to be successful enough that I can make a living, I can save, I can invest, I can own land and property, and I can travel abroad. Like, it's great that this country has provided me all of these opportunities, but I am not proud, especially under the current state that we're in, to call myself an American these days. And so those are some of the biggest takeaways. But I think also for me, what I realized too is that land ownership, bro, is ultimately what makes the world go round. If you own the land, you have an opportunity to pretty much write your own ticket, and not just write your own ticket to create generational wealth, but to create wealth in present time. Um, the land in Kenya, what I learned.
Come on, brother. I'm gonna need you to get it together.
Yeah, no, my son was calling me. Hold on one second. The land in Kenya, a lot of it used to be owned by the Maasai, and they didn't really realize coming out of colonization how important the land was, or how valuable the land was. So they just been kind of like giving it away, and they're like slowly moving. And I think part of it too is that the Maasai tribe is, they're very tribal in every aspect of it. Like they shun technology, and they shun Western ways in all facets. They understand how detrimental Western society has been to just mankind. Everywhere that, because my son gonna keep calling. But they realize that everywhere that, can you hear me? Okay, everywhere that the white
Yeah.
man particularly has touched down, it's they've left nothing but death, destruction, and devastation to the land and to the people, but most importantly to the land. And so I don't think that it's necessarily that they devalue the land as much as they devalue what's happening. They don't appreciate what's happening to it, and they just want to distance themselves. So they just keep moving further and further away from the epicenter of Kenya. And one guy told me, he was like, pretty soon, they're going to be as far as like Uganda, and just they're trying to get away from it. But land is very inexpensive there, very inexpensive there. We looked at some plots, and not like actually went to physically go tour the plots and look at it, but you see a lot of signs available. I'm online, I'm looking, I'm talking to people, and you realize like land is very inexpensive there still, and the opportunity to buy land, to own land there, is very affordable. um, and it's not as difficult a process as you may think it is. And it's even easier if you have good relationships and good networks with people there, that you can create kind of what we've done here, a conglomeration. You get 7 brothers together that got a couple of dollars, and now I don't need a lot, you don't need a lot, you don't need a lot, I don't gotta do a lot, you don't gotta do a lot. We can just all do a little, have a little, and we can own a lot. And I think that in addition to the fact that everywhere we went, bro, I was talking to a guy, and he said, man, when I told him we was from Arizona, he was like, that's close to California, huh? I was like, yeah. He's like, man, the crazy part is that the California is fake. He said they palm trees don't grow nothing. All our palm trees grow coconuts. They grow melons. They grow, you know what I'm saying, bananas. Like everywhere you go, like you just walking down the street and it's just mad cornfields on the side of the road. Like we stayed at an Airbnb and we was just like kind of like walking around, and they got coffee trees that they not even doing nothing with, that's growing mad coffee beans and bananas and fruit we couldn't even identify. I'm still to this day I'm trying to get Google to help me to identify this fruit. Every place that we stayed in, like it was just bustling with vegetation, and they like you could throw a seed, you could spit on the ground, and something's gonna grow. It's very fertile, and the opportunity to grow and take a part of the agriculture piece too as well. Um, is ripe for the picking, and so we got our eye on, especially me. Like I'm adamant about land ownership. I'm adamant about having an opportunity to own a piece of land in all the places that I enjoy traveling and want to be. Um, Very affordable, very doable, and agriculture to me is always going to be the epicenter of what makes any society go round. One of the biggest differences, and I haven't eaten since I've been home. We got home about 1 o'clock. I don't even know what I'm gonna eat yet
I
today.
already know where you're going
Um,
with this.
yeah, hey, the food so
Yeah,
fresh, man, so fresh. I mean, everybody's serving fresh juices, like no added sugars, no preservatives. The ingredients is very minimal at best. And
yeah,
it's just like, damn, bro, we ate so good. I couldn't
yeah,
even tell you how good we ate, and we had a chance to go to a lot of places that everybody, a lot of places had their own farm attached to the restaurant. But if your access to fresh food and fresh vegetables and quality ingredients is very prevalent there. It had easy access to it without a doubt.
man, that's beautiful, bro. That piece right there was a sharp contrast that I'm recalling that, and I mean it's so ridiculous over here, bro. Like I've been looking for seeded watermelon for several weeks now, bro, and my typical spots, man, they just not coming through, and they just kind of giving me the MJ shrug, like we ain't got it, and I'm
Hmm.
like,
Yeah,
yo, like this is ridiculous, man, and
yeah, yeah.
perhaps,
World out there.
perhaps, like our trajectory, right, as Black Americans, considering everything we've been through on this soil, and we persevered. We're a special people, but perhaps it's in our divination to return, right, and to embrace that global spirit where we moving around and connect
Hmm.
those relationships that you mentioned. That's like the key to life, right there, right?
Yeah.
Like making those relationships, coming back and just really optimizing not only ourselves like personally, but adding to, you know,
Hmm.
the innovation, the culture,
Yeah.
some of the things that we take for granted here and we just kind of do like there's a lot that we're great at and it's like second nature to us, right? We just kind of do it, right? Because we've always done it. So another piece you spoke to earlier was like the subtle disconnect amongst our demographics, and in the past I've described it as a veil, right? It's not like anything that's like fortified between us
Right.
that's really reinforced. It's just simple misconceptions that are driven
Hmm.
by propaganda and miseducation and a lack of exposure, proper exposure, right? So a trip like yours and a trip like I've done in the past, like those simple trips, interacting with people. I was being really inquisitive, like intentionally,
Yeah.
like trying to understand their perspectives and just being curious and just open, right? That
Hmm.
level of communication is ripping that veil apart. And when that veil is completely just torn apart and out of the way, I feel like opportunities are endless, like
Yeah.
literally, like limitless. There's so much we can do through collaboration,
Hmm.
um, because the level of ingenuity that we have on both sides is just brilliant. Which,
Yeah.
all of the top economists and obviously the big corporation, everyone acknowledges that Africa is the future. The youngest demographic is there. All the resources are there, and in a lot of aspects of business, big business, they see it as like untapped market to an extent. So hopefully, those like us, right, like-minded individuals that have good intent, right, and we have integrity in what we do, we can start to mobilize on some of these opportunities and encourage others to do so as well.
Yes, 100%, man. You said it all right there. Like the way I look at it is that we're gonna end up last to the party again. The wealthiest people in the world are looking at Africa as a place to invest because again, it's not that you can't get 10x, 20x, 50x gains on your money over time here. You can. Um, but almost anywhere that you invest in the continent, you have the ability to create generational wealth in one single investment. You could make one single investment in the continent and your great great grandchildren will be the benefactors. They could be, the next Rockefeller or the next whatever, right? Not to use those kind of examples, but I think that for me, it's like over $1 trillion worth of spending buying power we have. If we could just mobilize some of that and say, all right,
Mm.
let's create an investment consortium and let's put together 100 million, $1 billion, and let's invest in whether it's Kenya, whether it's Ghana, whether it's Senegal, whether it's South Africa, like wherever it is, let's take the money and let's invest it there, and support an economy and support a country, support a continent, which will be grateful for that. I don't think that any investment that I make, whatever, in here in America, unless it's something that I invest in myself or one of my brothers, right? Your business, your idea. I don't think that they'll appreciate it the same way. To be quite frank, they wouldn't give a fuck. They're grateful for the contribution, but they don't give a fuck about my money being invested in their company because they don't need it. They don't need it. And not to mention, now I'm going to invest in a company. I'm going to take those gains. I'm going to pay taxes on those gains to a country that tax dollar isn't going to benefit me. Um, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm just looking I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I can continue to play checkers all my life. And I can move across the board in this diagonal fashion in hopes to get across the board and get a king and have a position of power, or I could be out here really playing chess and I can really be strategizing and I can be trying to figure out how can I set up myself and my family for the next some odd years. So you need to personally, like, this is my message to everybody listening. You need to be thinking about it from two perspectives. A, how can I invest and how can I support and be a part of a movement that's happening right before our very eyes? They're not going to tell us about it on American media, but it's happening right before our very eyes. It's just no doubt about it. Or you need to be thinking about what's my exit plan? Because I don't know what the future holds for us here, bro. I don't. And I don't want to be a doomsdayer, or I don't want to be one of those people to say, oh man, but I look at it like what they're doing with technology in Kenya is they're trying to empower all the people to lift everybody up out of poverty, out of subjugation, out of they're trying to help raise the overall consciousness and confidence of all the people. What we're doing with technology here is we're trying to do away with people. When I see my
Oh,
brother,
so, bro.
True, hey, True said it earlier. He was like, bro, I drive all around the whole state every day, primarily Tuesday, Thursday to Sunday, right? My man he driving for Uber, and I respect it. And I'll never get inside an autonomous vehicle. But the reality is that they trying to do away with brothers like True.
Yeah, that's facts.
You can't go to a grocery store today that doesn't have a self checkout. They got self checkouts at Home Depot. They got self checkouts at Walgreens, at Dollar General. And Dollar General about to be extinct. Like everywhere you go, they're trying to find ways to do away with the lower rungs of our society to make it to where you're not needed anymore. So I don't gotta be a genius. I don't gotta be Nostradamus to be able to see the writing on the walls. I look at myself and I understand that I don't really care what happens in this country or in the economy. I'll figure out a way. I have skills that are very transferable, right? Um, but I understand that just because I'm gonna be okay doesn't mean that all of my people are going to be okay. And there's not enough that I can do to help all of us to like they're doing in the continent. They're trying to raise the overall consciousness and confidence of all the people. That I don't know what to do here. I don't know what to do to raise the consciousness of my people here. And so you need to be an investor or you need to have an exit plan. Primarily, you probably need to have both. That's like the smartest move. For
Yeah,
me, that's the approach that I'm taking going forward. I've been kind of on this journey the past year or two, and I think as this trip really highlighted that you need to put it in overdrive because they're spending. People are going there and they're spending their money there and they're investing there. And you could find yourself in a situation where, damn, I'm on the outside looking in again.
yeah. I think what you just highlighted there and what you were encouraging people to do, the writing is on the wall. We're not I'm not hearing anyone that's overly enthusiastic about the trajectory of this particular country, right? And especially not for us, right? So, considering that, I think those that want to ensure a particular quality of life for themselves and their families, they're going to be forced to mobilize on those two mindsets, hopefully both, because at scale, they've destroyed the soil, so our food is wrecked. They've destroyed
Mm,
education.
mm,
They've destroyed, I mean, the media already was what it was, but at this point, it's completely weaponized depending on which side and what day you want to be on. So confusion is at an all time high, right?
yeah.
Cohesion is like, even within our own demographic, I think cohesion has been just like destroyed amongst us. And as a nation, it's even more segregated. So when you just consider all of that, you're like, well, shit, where's this going? Even with our current administration, this dude, regardless of how many terms he wants to do, he's only going to be around for so long. But what he's done is he set a precedent, right? So there's somebody watching this dude right now that now has the perception or understanding that, oh, I could take it there, but someone's always going to be willing to press that envelope, right?
Hmm.
And keep pressing. And where does that get us in particular? So, I think COVID taught me it was an awakening for me as far as like just being situationally aware of like our society, like to a higher extent than I already was. And I think we're on the other side of something. Like all of this stuff is in play, right? And automation and everything that they pushing right now, it's like getting people out of the way, like in a
Yeah.
way that hasn't been done before. But Dr. Claude Anderson talks about a permanent underclass.
Mm,
And he's articulated this theory that he has, but in my mind, it's not a theory. It's in motion now. We're starting to
reality.
see it incrementally be rolled out. So you got to ask yourself if all the projections show that the net household income for us is zero by 2050 or whatever that year is, what is that saying? Like they're literally telling you the permanent underclass, that whole concept, not only is it a thing, but we're driving this vehicle now.
Yeah.
And if you are in a position where you're just subjected to the volatility of the market, and I mean, that's just a really tough place to be, especially if you have a family and your ability to provide is conducive to what is being like provided, readily available for you to tap into. That is extremely disadvantageous to be in, especially as a man, like having that foresight and you're like, if X happens, I'm going to do Z. If you're that type of person like I am, like you got to start thinking about an
Mm-hmm.
exit strategy or at least an alternate, right?
Yes.
Where you can pivot where necessary because all of that stuff is upon us and the way technology is moving, it's moving exponentially. So
Fast.
the next 3 years, like, because pre 2020 looks a lot different than what 2025 looks like. So just imagine by the time 2030 rolls around, bro, like they're going to be moving a lot of people out of the way. And what I foresee is like the concept of universal basic income is going to be a necessity for a lot of people. It's not going to be a convenience. Oh, I'm going to stay at home and get this check. It's going to be, I need to comply with everything they say I need to comply with so I can ensure I get this
Mm-hmm.
little check. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Nah, for
that
sure.
can include jabs, that can include curfews, that can include all kinds of stuff where the mechanisms to control your life in exchange for survival is at play. And what do people do? You know what I'm saying? Like I mean I know the answer, but it's that's a very that's a
Yeah.
frightening thing. You know what I mean? Boxing people
Nah, for
in
sure.
like that.
Yeah, and you know what happens when a lot of people get their back up against the wall? If they think that people are just going to take it, but I mean I don't know, that's like
That's a
another.
different conversation. Yeah. I think what you said, Colin, is so true. Like the new poverty line is the median income line. Like it's so crazy that to think that 5 years ago, if you made six figures, especially in Arizona, you was doing all right. You just over the 100,000 mark. Like you could make $108,000 a year and by yourself, and you was doing swell. You're doing very well. Today, it ain't cutting it. You're probably struggling. If you're making just over six figures, you got to be making two, three, $400,000 to be able to live a good quality of life. The kind of quality of life that's like, damn, you got to make that much money just to be well off and not be working in this nonstop hamster wheel trying to. I mean, and that's the thing is that like this is what I learned when I first started traveling abroad overseas, right? And I was going to Israel and I was going to Spain and different parts of Europe. What I learned very well is that we're caught up in this hamster wheel. We
Mm,
think that I gotta have the house, the car, the clothes, the status, and the moment you get on this wheel and it starts spinning, you can't get off. Because if you get off, they're gonna cut your lights off. They're gonna cut your water off.
yeah,
They gonna take your car insurance, and if you ain't got car insurance, you going to jail.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? You
yeah,
going to jail.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's and then it's like you think about what it costs to live now. It's like damn, like we went toward a place and it was like $150 a month to get you a 3 bedroom flat in Kenya.
Mm,
$150 a
mm,
month. So
mm,
it's like now I don't gotta break my back working 60 hours a week through two and three jobs just so that I can keep the lights on and keep the food on the table while paying for this roof over my head. And it's not like I'm living in some mansion. Like this is just you working extra hard just to have the basic necessities, just to live in the slum.
Why
So
you talking about me, man? Why you
nah,
talking?
brother, it's I'm talking about myself too because I live in a household where my lady, bro, she has a full-time job and she's a counselor and she going to school. You know what I'm saying? So and it's like we all out here hustling. We all out here doing our best. You are just one of many. This is our plight. This is all of our struggles, bro. This is how we all got to live in order to be able to survive. And it's just like in America, I learned very early is that in
That too.
other countries, what they do is they work to live. What we do here is we live to work. You can't get off the wheel and I work in finance and I have this conversation with people all the time. Like they teach us that credit is something that we should use in our personal lives. So everybody got credit cards. Now people buying Jordans on credit, people paying for like I pay for this vacation in cash. I don't use credit, right? Because I learned my mentor told me early, he was like, you never use credit for entertainment because you're gonna be paying for months and months and years for one night for one experience. He says credit is a business transaction. You're supposed to use credit to advance a business, to expand a business. But what they did was they made it a personal endeavor so that if you can stay in debt, you can't get off the wheel.
Yeah.
You can't get off the wheel. Your credit score is like so vitally important to people that it's like, why are you concerned about having good credit so that you can borrow more money when you can't even afford to pay the people you already owe? Equity, bro. Equity is the name of the game, and they're not teaching
Come
that
on.
to us here. What they doing is they just teaching us this enslaved mentality, this enslaved
Exactly.
mindset. And you got to find a way to have equity in everything that you're doing. And if I'm going to own equity, I want to own it in a place where I can be appreciated. I just want to say this real quick too, because I know that this is a misconception that a lot of people have, and people are listening when I say like you got to have an exit plan. It's like, well, I don't want to go live in some third world country, and it's like
From
every luxury that you could have, we experienced it in Kenya. Like we wasn't staying in the slums. We stayed in some really, really, really nice places. We stayed in some resorts. We stayed on some places that was like I said, a place that was like a 6-acre lot that we were staying on. Like all of the luxuries and creature comforts that we have here, they got there. They got running water. They got good plumbing. They got electricity. They got, you know what I'm saying? Like nice cars. We see people in Range Rovers and BMWs, but we also seen a lot of people that didn't really care about that. They was like, I just need a vehicle to get me to and from, bro. Like, I
Right.
don't need to have the biggest, the greatest, and the best. I just need to be able to be at peace, to give my family an opportunity to have happiness, to have joy, and opportunity. We just need an opportunity. And so you could go to a place like Kenya and Nairobi or a surrounding area or even a coastal beach town, and you could live the same exact quality of life and have all of the exact same things that you have here. But one of the things when we got there early, like halfway through the trip, I asked my son, I was like, what's your biggest takeaway so far? And he said, you could be here and not be judged.
mm,
He's
mm,
like he's like back home they gonna judge you for how your hair is. They gonna judge you for the clothes that you got on. Like it's people walking around. You know it ain't real Balmain. You know that ain't real Louis Vuitton. But nobody's judging them like, oh, you got on that fake stuff. Who cares? It's just clothes. It's just clothes with a logo and the brand on it. It's something that I put over my body so that I can move around and maneuver. And they not judging you because you got the most, or they not judging you because you got the least. Because we shaking hands with peasants and we shaking hands with people who are very affluent and very wealthy. At the end of the day, we're all just human beings having a spiritual experience. And that's the biggest difference is that they create this persona, this facade that we have to live up to. We're teaching our kids that you got to live up to this standard of excellence, whatever that excellence is. And it's very detrimental to our health, our well-being, which is why the suicide rate is so high. One of the last days, and we noticed it every day that we was there, but we was like riding back home from a restaurant, and as we cut into the neighborhood, it's a nice neighborhood. It's just some people laid out in the grass. They just like chilling. It's such a nice day outside, and they just like laid out in the grass. And in America, you would look down on the people like, oh man, they homeless. You ride by and there's people like on the side of the road taking the piss. Like we would look down on these people, but it's like they're not concerned with the optics. If you can get, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and the brother was like, "Yo, if you can get over the good look long enough, you can get to the good look." But we can't get over the good look, so we'll go in debt and we'll at the detriment of our health, just so that we can put on some name brand tags or we can have an emblem on the front of our vehicle and or say like I'm arriving in style. And it's like, but what does that really cost you? What is that really costing you?
brother.
And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, bro, about all of the highlights of this trip and all of the things that me and my family learned and experienced. But those are the two things, man. Be an investor, man. Be an investor somewhere. If it ain't in Africa, that's okay, because there's a lot of burgeoning markets that are just like that in Central America, South America, different parts of Asia. Like you could go and your quality of life isn't going to be diminished. On the contrary, it'll be elevated because it's going to cost you so much less to live, and they're not going to be trying to kill you via the food that you put into your body.
That part.
Jules, Jules.
Yo,
Man, thank you for sharing
and
all
did
of this.
Yo, you said earlier that you don't want to spend much more of your money and resources investing in things that support this system when the continent is begging you to come home, and you pretty much expounded on all that here. So once again, you know what I'm saying? Appreciate you, brother, sharing your testimony. Nakia, you got anything else before we head out?
Hey, let me add this real quick, bro. It just came to mind because I was listening to it earlier, and I don't know what the bars were at the beginning of this episode because I was late, but I felt like I had a perfect one. But I'm gonna just expose it. But I was listening to Kendrick earlier, and the song that he has called "Mama" is on "To Pimp a Butterfly," and basically the theme of that song is how going back to Africa and what that did to his mind state, how transformative it was for him, like that sort of thing. Um, this conversation reminds me of that, right? Because it really puts things in proper perspective and how we overcomplicate a lot of things. And in some instances, like less is more. And when I say less, not necessarily less in quantity or quality, but like less layers of complexity, right? Like sometimes it's just simple. Like you talking about, oh boy, just laying in the grass, like connected to Mother Earth, right? And that's something that is also very apparent with our society here. We're separated from that. And even if we wanted to do that here, there's chemicals all in our grass. So it's like they even
Mm.
tainted that experience when you want to be intentional about that. You know what I mean? So yeah, man. I just wanted to put that out there, man. That's a great song. That's one of my favorite albums too, man. It's like especially considering the time that kind of came out. Like it was a lot going on in the nation, but I tapped into that recently, man. And this conversation is like right on time, man, because I was listening to that and had that on my mind. And when you said you was gonna share your experience, I'm like, man, this is perfect. I got the bars tonight, and I was late, so disregard that. But
That's
yeah,
all
man,
good.
I'm glad you made it back safe.
Yep.
And looking forward to further building this conversation. And to your point, man, yo, for all my people, like-minded individuals, link up with like minds. You know what I mean? And really just try to organize because I think that's what's lacking with us in a lot of instances. The
Yeah.
organizational integrity, right? We don't trust because of like historically things have happened. And you get burned here and there, and people, doing what they do. So that stagnates a lot of motion. But I think if you are genuine in your desire, the universe, God, the world, however you want to articulate that, has a way of putting people, situations, thoughts, and things in front of you for you to take that step into because you asked for it, right? And I do believe in that sort of manifestation. So I would just encourage people to, embrace, you know, curiosity. It takes some boldness to step out there. And it takes some thick skin, to be honest, because people going to look at you like you crazy. You know what I'm saying? When you start talking this sort of thing, right? Because it's just not common. And to be honest, that's kind of like validation that is like divine in my mind. That's how I've always seen it. You know what I mean? Because if everybody's doing it, like
It
there's
wouldn't be
that's
good.
you know what I mean? That sort of
Yeah.
thing. So just something to
Yeah.
consider. I just wanted to add that piece before we
Yeah.
close out.
Yeah. Genius is always misunderstood by commonality, right? Common folks. And what I would say is that like I've I've invested in a lot of things, stocks, bonds, companies. I've invested in myself. I've started a number of businesses, and I've had my ass handed to me. I've invested in some things that later I'm like, damn.
It's not me, huh?
Uh,
Yeah, the brother froze up on us, didn't
yeah, he froze for sure.
he? Yeah, he in the Matrix. He in the Matrix, man.
What was he saying? What was the last part he said? He said he
Nah,
was
he was talking about his investments. He was talking about the fact that he's made multiple investments, man, and
that's
some of them panned out, some of them didn't. According to what he was saying, man. And what stood out to me, man, about this whole conversation is this, man. Two things. One is he talked about the fact of of being welcomed with open arms, welcome home. You know what I mean? Like is a part of the visa that even came up was welcome home, man. So that will forever stand out to me because um, we know it. It's written in the text, man. The ancient text they talk all about it, man. But to see it and to have a brother to know a brother that actually has experienced it and set foot on the land, that man is just it's profound. And then he says like the universe was working in his favor, like the political unrest. We right up until the time of it happening of him going. I've been watching and keeping track of what's going on the ground there and everything, and I've been seeing it, and like he said, it calmed down right before he got there, and then once he got on the ground, what I'm saying, like the universe just came to him, man, and that's all about good energy, man. That's all about when you do what's right by people, man, people will do right by you, man. So that was powerful to me. That's what stood out to me. Welcome back, brother. You was in the
Yeah, my
matrix for a
phone
second.
died. My bad.
Yeah, you was talking about your investments, man, and like trials and
Yeah, you talking
tribulations.
about the
Yeah,
investments, and someone wanted
no, I was.
got it
Well,
handed
no,
to you.
it it was yeah. I'm just saying, man. Like I've lost a lot of money. I've made a lot of money in investments, but I've never let a loss keep me from investing in the
Man,
future. Right?
that's it.
People are afraid to invest in something or to build with brothers and sisters. Like, ah, man, I don't want to get robbed. I don't want to get scammed, or I don't want to
Right.
waste my money. But that's what we doing. We literally out here wasting our money every single day of our lives, and so you can't be
100%, man.
you can't be afraid to take the risk. I think that what we've done as a collective of seven brothers coming together and putting our money and our resources, not knowing what the future would hold, not knowing if one brother was going to be ethical and one brother wasn't, or how this is going to work. Like, we just did it. You can't be afraid. You got to take the risk because, no risk and no biscuit, man. That's the only way you're ever going to be
Exactly.
able to do anything great is you got to
The
be.
greater
My
the
man told
risk,
me,
the greater the reward.
hey, my man said this a long time ago, and then I'll yield with this, man. He said that there's a reason why nature puts the fruit out on the limb. That's where that saying comes from. You got to be willing to go out on the limb if you want to be able to get the good fruit. And there's a risk that you could fall out of that tree trying to get some of that fruit. But if you don't take the risk, you're never going to
You
be
never
able
get the
to
fruit.
have the fruit that you hope to have, not just some stuff that fell on the ground.
Powerful,
Right.
man. Powerful words of wisdom, man.
Hey, yo, yeah. Before we bounce, I just wanted to like bring everything together with the last episode, which was with the good professor.
Man,
It kind of goes along with the last time we had Black Star Prepper. And so all I wanted to say was in regards to the black and the brown unity. We saw that firsthand at the school because
100%.
the first person she brought up was dude from Hopkins Construction, I think it was, or whatever.
Yeah,
Brown brother. He's
I
the
see
one
Yeah.
that.
who
Yep.
bulldozed everything out the way for them to build that. You know what I'm saying? You look at the mural, it's the black and the brown. So for people
Yeah.
to say it's not a thing is bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
Man, I was watching some Asian guy was saying earlier today. He said if we really realized, if the Asian people, the black people, the brown people really realized that we are one and we came together, we'd no longer be the minority.
Ooh,
Overnight,
man.
overnight. He said, and I was like, man, where's everybody? Where are the people that's been listening to this? You know what I'm saying? Where's this been missing at? But overnight, we would erase what they're trying to do, what they've been on the playing field to do for the longest time. So man, it's powerful to be able to see a brother connect with the motherland like that, man, and just have a dope experience, man, and be able to come back and to share that experience with us. But more importantly, to reinvigorate us to be able to continue the journey that we've already started here, and aiming and pointing towards the motherland.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's all I got, man. You know what I'm saying? Um,
So yeah, man, make sure y'all check out episode 53, man. It's dope. It's dope. We pulled up to school here in Phoenix, man, that opened. Shout out to Professor Kilmar Muhammad, man. She's doing great works in South Phoenix. Just make sure you check out that episode. There's some good information in there around what's really taking place in South Phoenix. The place that they kind of written off, right? They closed, what was it, 5 schools, I believe, that just this past year that they closed in that particular district. And lo and behold, man, by faith, by faith, she said she opened a school, man. So I think it's a bigger message in that, man, for all of us to continue the steps that we're on. You may not see the steps, you may not see what's coming around the corner, but just continue to have faith and know that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to, man. Our creator,
Amen.
the creator of the universe is on our side. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So, man, here at the Growth Spot, we're unified in action to build, protect, and expand a fruitful legacy of love, equity, growth, ancestry, cooperation, and yield. By inspiring and educating on the practices of agriculture, self-care, nutrition, environmental stewardship, and entrepreneurship, we aim to cultivate a vibrant community that's rooted in resilience and sustainability. Peace.
Equity, man. Get you some.
Equity, man. That's powerful.
Dig
Get
it.
it?